Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch, and I just wrapped up an amazing conversation with Eli Cairo of Olympia Provisions. If you guys don't know about Olympia Provisions, you have to go to their website right now. Make some of the best charcuterie in the entire world. I'm serious. He sent me a sample pack, and every single thing that I tried was the best of that I've ever had. Best summer sausage, best frankfurter. I mean, the list goes on, and I think I had like 8 different things. It was phenomenal. Some of the best cured meat you will ever have, hands down. He even talked in the podcast. I think it was Oprah said that his chorizo was the best in the world, and there's high praise from people all around. There's tons of awards that he and his team have won. They have 5 different restaurants and a bar out there in the Portland area. And there's just so many wonderful things that you can try at each location, different kind of tastes and flavors. But I highly suggest you go check out the book that's above me. It's a cookbook, but it kind of tells about his story and how he got involved in his time in Switzerland and, being an apprentice and then staying there for about 5 years and then coming back and starting his journey of, what was then to be Olympia Provisions and, kind of talk about him growing up with his family, big Greek family that, lived off the land for a lot of ways, and they ran a restaurant too. So just it's a wonderful history of who Eli is and what he's all about. We talked a little bit about his involvement in the turkey book above me here that Jesse Griffiths wrote, and Eli has a few different recipes in there too. So yeah, it was just a wonderful conversation. He's such a good gentleman, and I think you guys are really going to thoroughly enjoy this and our conversation. And make sure you go to the description below and follow those links, follow his journey, and make sure you put it in order. We're also going to be doing a giveaway with some books and some of his, products there too. So some of you guys can be able to taste those and be able to open up those pages and see some of the beautiful pictures and amazing recipes and give yourself a try at making some amazing charcuterie. So without further ado, here is the podcast with Eli Cairo. You guys enjoy. Take care. Hey Eli, how you doing today, man?
Good, my friend. How are you? Nice to see you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Good to see you too, man. I'm excited to really go into all sorts of conversations with you. I mean, we're going to be talking Turkey. We're going to be talking about your restaurants, your book, your journey, your time in Switzerland, everything. But I think the best thing to do is usually kind of start at the beginning. Will you give listeners a little idea of where you grew up? Talk about your family restaurants, and maybe just kind of the beginning of your love of kind of being in there in the kitchen and perfecting all these amazing foods that you have now and that you have out with the Olympia Provisions.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good place to start for me. Well, I'm Eli Cairo. I'm the owner and operator of Olympia Provisions. I'm a sausage maker by trade, but a lot of people want to call me a chef sometimes, and I'm kind of, I make more sausage and cured meats than I do cook in restaurants. So I tend to be more of a sausage maker than that. But yeah, so I was lucky enough to grow up in Salt Lake City, kind of Sandy, the Murray area, if you're familiar with it. And my father, he moved from Greece. So he was first generation, or I'm first generation. And he's from an amazing area in Greece called the Peloponnese. It's most famous for olives. The Kalamata olives are there in Sparta. Real rural, real up in the mountains, and from a farming community. They did a lot of hunting and fishing, and they grew all their own food. And somebody told him at some point in his later teens, early 20s, that Salt Lake City was the exact area as the Peloponnese in Greece. And so my father decided that his end goal in life was to open up, raise a family in Salt Lake City, Utah. And he met my wife, my mother in Chicago, and moved her to Salt Lake. And he did everything in his possible, in his abilities to make our little 2 acre house into a Greek operating farm. And of course, like classic Greek Americans, he opened up 2 Greek American cafes, kind of like I'm sure you're familiar of them. They're real big on the East Coast too, but like those awesome Greek cafes where you can get a Denver omelet, but at the same time you can get like the best spanakopita you've ever had, or like you'll get a perfect burger alongside with the euro. And it was just an awesome little restaurant, but I fell in love with it. My dad was one of those guys like. I think it's in that old world talent where if you could make it, you did. If it was a booze, we made it at home. We made our own wine. He was always distilling. We would cure all of our own garlic, and we'd raise animals every year for the winter and start, preserving them and do all of the things. And I fell in love with it. I couldn't leave my dad's side. If he was going to the restaurant, I wanted to be in there at the restaurant with him. I didn't have much for schooling, if you know. It was too slow paced for me. So whatever my father was doing, if it was pulling weeds, shoveling snow, chopping wood, hunting, fishing, cooking, I was with him. And yeah, that kind of started it, how I got into it. Fast forward, and my father passed away when I was 14 years old, and yeah, my mother had really, it's kind of one of the most courageous and bravest things I've seen a mother do. She said pretty much, "Hey, you're really bad at school, but you really love nature and you really love this. You should take some time." And I took a lot. I took a year at around 17 years old. I dropped out of high school strictly to snowboard, and I got sponsored for snowboarding. Was able to snowboard for a lot, and then long story short, I called my mom after getting scared and tired of snowboarding that I wanted to be a chef and be fancy, and I missed the whole life of just making food every day. And then yeah, called my mom, told her pretty quickly I want to move back to Europe to do this, and she said you should move to Europe. I'm gonna ship you to Greece, and you're gonna
Hmm.
go work in the village. And I was like, Mom, I love the village. It's really really fun, but I love running water, and I want to be a fancy chef. I want to go to Paris. And she's like, I think you should go to Greece. It was probably one of the first real arguments we've ever had. And then she said, let me call around. And she got in contact with somebody in the Swiss Alps. I got a phone call. They were like, hey, we had an apprentice that got injured. If you could be here in 2 weeks, you could start your apprenticeship program. And I did it. I sold all my snowboarding gear. I sold my Subaru. I sold everything I possibly had, and went to the library. This is pre at least me having great access to the
Right,
internet,
right.
and utilized this old tool called the encyclopedia. And
The
you know
what?
it, yeah, totally. And it's like I had the name. It was Unterwasser in Wildhus St. Gallen, and I went and I found it, and it was like I just clearly remember being ski resort town near Zurich, Switzerland, famous for meat making and cheese making, and I was so sold. It's all it took. Well, I'll figure it out. And so yeah, I got on an airplane and landed there and went to the village. And I mean, it was right. I was just pinching myself, just having left snowboarding. It was winter when I got there, a lot of snow. Call from the village, and then somebody comes down and gets me. It doesn't speak very much English, and we take a car up halfway into the middle of the ski resort to this beautiful Swiss hotel that's just like right out of the books. And I walk in and figure out that I'm the right person. They said you could start tomorrow morning. And this is when it got really, really cool. Of course, I'm already pinching myself. I'm in the middle
Right.
of a ski resort, being like, whoa, these mountains are amazing. The next morning, I walk into work and I open up a walk-in. Like they're showing me around. I open up a walk-in and there's a full ibex hanging in the walk-in, horns on, everything, just been gutted. And I was like, wow, I've read a lot about these animals in my wildest dreams. I never thought I would touch one or be around one. And then they proceeded to tell me what I took from it is that, Bjerger Stump, the owner of the hotel, he's a Jägermeister, hunter master, and he does all of the wild game processing in our region. So if you shoot an animal up there, you come and check it out at our hotel, and we would process this animal, and we could some of the hunters would allow us to buy the meat off it, resell it in our fancy restaurant, which is pretty foreign in America, but
Right.
we would fully process it, making sausage, broth, everything. And pretty quickly, I knew I wasn't going anywhere. I was like, if I got a chance to eat and taste and cut up wild ibex, and yeah, we would do about on really during the fall and the big hunting times, we would do about 200 to 220 wild animals a month. So there was a lot of chamois and ibex and red deer and marmots and all that cool stuff. So yeah, that's where that went. And I started my apprenticeship. Supposed to be a 6 month long apprenticeship, and my neighbors were cheesemakers. I was able to snowboard out of my door. I was learning something unbelievable. I was trying to learn another language. I knew they weren't going to get rid of me. I begged and begged to stay. They said I was illegal. They said, if you don't tell, I won't tell. We worked another 2 years together. I begged to go to school, the whole time just doing everything I could in the valley. I loved it. I was fascinated by helping the cheesemakers next door, rotating hay, milking cows. And they had a kill plant in the village, and we would kill cows on a very ideal setting and process them and chill them and do the whole process. And I was learning how to bake, and cook and do all the other stuff as well. I just kind of knew they were never getting rid of me. I asked if I could do a formal education or a true apprenticeship, and Annegret said yes. Bjerger didn't say no. So, long story short, I snuck my way into school. And 5 years later, I was finished up with a culinary degree from the Swiss Alps and a minor, I guess you would call it, in butchery and charcuterie.
Man, what a journey. I mean,
That's pretty
that
funny.
I loved reading through your book, which is available on your website and comes with a nice little sampling of some of your meats there. And it was so neat to hear about your journey. And then also when you went back there again and kind of, captured all this and kind of revisited friends and all these places. And, so
Mhm.
you started out right there in the Swiss Alps at the Alpenrose Hotel.
Yeah.
And that's like Switzerland is like the region near kind of Austria and Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein.
Liechtenstein,
Yep.
yep, it's right in the
Never
corner
said it
there.
right.
Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein. Yeah, right in that little tiny mountain village up there.
I
Really
mean,
beautiful part of the Alps.
it just the pictures there and just it's so I mean it's dreamy, man. What an amazing spot. And you kind of talk about that area having so many different restaurants and
Mhm.
so many amazing beverages too.
Oh,
What in that area, can you kind of describe as far as what was that like with the different region around there and all the different restaurants? And is it more of a seasonal thing for when people are kind of traveling through? What was it like living there, 365?
yeah. The region itself it's perfectly located for where Zurich is and the Germany border. They can come over to Switzerland pretty easy, and it's also the first kind of mountains that are right there, and they're very very famous for cheese making.
Hmm.
Appenzeller cheese is the ridge right over, so it's very famous, and people always come down there year round to experience the cheese and the proximity to the big cities and it in the wintertime, which I thought fascinating enough when I was there. In America, I was like that guy that didn't want to go into the lodge. I wanted to get as many turns as I possibly could, always pushing myself. And then, kind of the first day I went snowboarding, it was with other Swiss people. It was a big dump day, powder day, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna rule. And we get up to the top of the mountain, and I was like ready to roll. And they're like, no, 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 my friend, we're going skiing. We got to go get a fresh croissant and a coffee with plum liquor in it. It's like 9 in the morning and nobody's really rushing out. And then like we took 2 runs and then we went up to another restaurant that served wild game and had hash browns and wild game. And it kind of changed the mentality from, yeah, yeah, we're skiing, we're having a great time, but this food and beverage part of this is also unbelievable. And then that's kind of the winner. There's 3 ski resorts. I think they have like 15 different lodges you could ski in. It would be almost impossible to hit them all in one day, even though multiple times we tried to have a beer and ski to every which one of them in my
Right.
younger days. But in the summertime, I think is when it really, really shines. Is there's so much hiking and climbing to all these cool little pockets in this region, and they all are very famous for certain specialties out there. So everybody knows, like you'll go into this region and imagine banging out like a pretty rigorous, steep 8 or 9 mile hike, but at the end of your hike, you're gonna get, maybe a pfeffer, which is a sour Braten made with wild meat thickened with blood over hash browns and like the coldest beer in a pint, or maybe they ferment their own salamis there, but you're definitely going to have some epic cheese and butter and fresh baked bread. So it was really great. And all the restaurants, they're kind of famous. I hit this. There's one, it's called Forella, and it's a little bit of a poke to get in there, but honestly, you'll sit down at this terrace and look at these huge mountains. I think it's like a 5 mile walk in, so not crazy, but you'll order 2 trout and they'll be like, all right, let's go catch the trout. And they have, I'm sure they're stocker trouts, don't get me wrong, but nonetheless, they're catching trout for you and you're sitting there eating charcuterie, drinking Riesling, and they bring over a true Troton Bleu, which is a trout so fresh that they blanch it in a court bouillon and the skin turns bright blue. And, they melt butter over the top of it. And there's part of me you're like, man, how do I top this? The setting and fresh caught poached trout, and it's a really really great place. Yeah, and
Wow,
in the
man.
season, it was kind of my dreamiest time. I was obsessed with climbing. Bjerger and his friends were hunting enough, and I snowboarded, but I was just like living in the middle of the mountains, and I do think it's a big reason why I stuck with it was if I was in a city at that age in my time, I would have probably been really distracted and girls and partying and all that stuff. But here I was there to work. And in Switzerland, it's you're if you're doing a culinary apprentice, you start in the morning, usually around 7 o'clock. You work around 12 in the afternoonish or after the lunch rush, 1 o'clock. You have 3 hours of Steamerstoon, and then you come back for dinner service, usually 6 days a week. So you're really focused, but you get those 3 magical hours in the day where you can get on your mountain bike or get to a climbing crag or go snowboarding or run to a top of a mountain. You can kind of reboot. Yeah, that was an amazing time, and learning the language and getting to see the culture and the traditions and how they migrated their cows up to the Alps. It was real fun. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. Is this okay for you?
This is absolutely okay. No, I mean,
Great,
I
great.
want to know all I can. And when you mentioned also too, like with the ibex and working with the Jägermeister there, were you doing any hunting? What kind of environment was that like for you? Because I know that obviously still hunt these days, and we'll jump into that too. But I was curious, being in such a magical new place, is that something you had access to? I know you done some fishing and stuff too, you mentioned, but yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, the only time I was able to go hunting is with Bjerger.
Hmm.
So that after a year or two, and I really learned the language, and he caught ground that I spent a lot of time in the mountains, and my father was a hunter, and all the things, and I was a hard worker. He invited me a few times to go hunting, and it was, I mean, everything to me. It's just been so long, but getting to the top of these beautiful peaks before sunup and starting to glass these beautiful things, and they're very specific with which animals can be taken down to the exact. It almost seems unreal, but we would pass on 30 to 40 chamois in a day, and I just like, please, I really want to do this in my lifetime, Jared. Like pull that trigger. And we'd go up and look with the other Jaegers and go count ibex, and they knew that I climbed. And so if I saw a cool ibex that was missing an antler or a horn, excuse me, and we'd be like, hey, there's an ibex over on this wall over here that's in there. It looks like it's kind of in its and so I communicate to Bjerger, and Bjerger would tell his other hunter friends where it was. And just being up there so much, I got obsessed with watching these beautiful animals move around. It's an interesting thing. So there's a part in my book, I'm not sure if you read that part, about how Bjerger received one elk in his life. And so he got to that level where they're like, Bjerger, you're the Jägermeister of this valley. Here's your elk. Follow it. Like, this is yours. And he got it at a spike, and he followed it for 12 or 13 years. I'm not sure, but he got every match set off of this elk was in his valley. And towards the edge of its life, he got kicked out of its herd and pushed over to the Austrian side. And then the Jaeger from there was like, hey, Bjerger, I think your bull elk is in my field over here in our valley. Come over and shoot it. And it's like a beautiful story. He's followed him for 12, 13 years and shot this one bull that he'll ever shoot in his valley. And then of course has the mount. And how rare have you ever seen 12 match sets, let alone the
Yeah.
the one animal? And so you see all of it, and they have a big respect for it. It's the eating culture. This is a fun part about the Alpenrose as like a restaurant. You could come there during the fall season, and you could order like a chamois steak, like a back of a chamois, and a steinbuck, and a deer, and an elk, or possibly a marmot sausage by the ounce. And so you could be like, oh my gosh, I'd like to have four of these different types of animals that I'll probably never going to have. And I'll take the perfectly foraged morel mussels cooked, or morels in demi-glace with whipped cream and hash browns. And that's your meal. It comes out on a copper plate, and it's like 3 or 4 wild steaks sizzling in a pan while you're, you know, having endless demi-glace of morels. It's quite amazing. Yeah.
I
Really
think it's
delicious.
a good thing we did this after lunch, because I don't know if I would have been able to even make it through this part of the podcast. Oh my goodness. I mean, and you have these amazing pictures, and you talk about this respect. And I mean, just the people in Switzerland there, and like they are hard working people. There is a meticulous nature to this. So whenever, people are having their own specialty and what they're making, what they're curing, whatever it is, if it's meats, it's cheese, you
Mhm.
kind of give a nod and respect to that. And I think you talk about kind of bringing in that kind of mentality when you came back here, and just kind of shifting into your move back home. One, What was it that made you decide, okay, my time here is up and I'm ready to go and take on this new journey? And what was that timeline between then until you started with OP and wanting to kind of take that to that next level?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I say this often, and it's kind of it was a piece of just pure naivety that is so beautiful. Is when after 6 months or so working with my neighbor that made cheese, and I saw him transition to his cows out on grass, and was caring about how the cheese that it dawned on me that there's a certain group of people that can make a livelihood out of making a product. And I don't know how that never dawned on me in my lifetime. I just kind of, especially being around food and what my
Yeah.
father did and everything, you would have thought that at some point in my life I would have been like, hey, I should make meat for a living. I just thought I was going to be a chef. Wasn't necessarily like a product obsession. But then as I got to know them more and they would just see how obsessed they were about their products and how much the town respected them and how the actual government protected some of these people's practices. And I started toying with my head as I love being a chef. I love cooking. I love making people happy through food. But
Hmm.
man, that's got to be an amazing reward to be able to work your whole life at a product to get better at and know it's not going to be mastered. And I meet sausage makers and salami producers that had this deep down passion for it. And I was lucky enough to meet a gentleman that killed beef in Graubünden, and I was pretty sure that's where I was going to retire up in this real steep mountain valley, just air curing beef seasonally, so killing cows in the fall and drying them throughout the outside in the winter and bringing them into the house and finishing them and selling them in high-end stores. I was like, that seems like a good life for me. I'm going to do this. Guaranteed 6 months or 6 weeks vacation, and all the Swiss benefits, no
Right.
crime, access to all the beautiful European areas. I was like, this is pretty good. And at this time, my sister had moved from Salt Lake City to Portland, Oregon. And of course, we started missing family. I'm Greek, and it's we're tight. It started seeping into me. She's like, Portland's a really beautiful place. All the people up here really talk about food. We get salmon runs. I know you haven't had salmon. There's Dungeness crab everywhere. There's a region all they talk about is wine and beer and coffee and chocolate makers and all these things. And I pretty much eye rolled, being like, "Come on, I'm in the Swiss Alps. Like this is as good as it's gonna get." And I came, and she took me right to the Portland Farmers Market downtown. And man, I'm unapologetically American. All of a sudden, you realize that when you come back, you
Yep.
spend 5 years away and you step off it, and everybody's a little bit more open and they're so excited, and you're like, "Oh, this is me. I can have a bonfire on the coast and not pull a permit, or I can the freedoms that come along with it." It felt really, really great. And she took me to this farmers market, and I'm walking around and I'm seeing all of these unbelievable vendors, like organic moshes and these great farmers, and Native Americans were smoking meat, and they had all the salmon run from the Columbia River. And there was this blue cheese maker. He's very famous now. It's Rogue River Blue. He's a blue
Hmm.
cheese maker in Southern Oregon. And he had a line, I kid you not, it was like 70 people. And I was like, "What is this?" And Michelle's like, "It's a blue cheese. It's unbelievable. Do you want to wait?" And we waited in line, and I got this cheese, and it was just mind blowing. It was real molded cheese, crazy, all of the things. I'm like, "Wow, this many people want this blue cheese here. Let's get salami." Michelle, I've been working in these salami plants and covering them with mold and wild animals, and I had all these grand ideas. I'm going to cure elk and do all this stuff. And she thought I was a crazy person. But we went to a specialty store. I tried salami, and instantly it was like a very harsh awakening. The first thing I saw is I believe really in crazy wild active molds. You may have seen this on my salamis. They have
Oh, yeah.
crazy colors, and they're more different. And I see these salamis behind the case, and they're these bright white, all uniform, all but it is. And I was like, "What in the world is that?" And tried them, and I was like, "This isn't mold. It looks like rice flour or milk flour." And I tasted the meat, and I was like, "Man, this tastes like depression and just horrible
Tastes like
experiences."
depression.
It's like not good. It didn't get me, and told her right then and there, if there's not a meat maker in Oregon, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna make salami the way I wanted to. But yeah, I came back completely broke, borrowed money from my sister, lived in her basement, and she told me, "I'm not willing to open up a USDA meat plant yet. You should probably get a job." So I used the culinary background to get a chef job while I was working with the USDA on the weekends and the nights to eventually, what would it take to open up a naturally fermented and never heat treated shelf stable salami plant? Slowly but surely worked through that. In 2009, it's kind of a fascinating little fact on it. I was a one man employee. I think it was 700 square feet meat plant, and I did about 200 pounds of salami a week, or sausage and salami a week. Tiny, tiny, tiny production. But I was the first person in the history of the state to be able to do that, make fermented salamis and ship it over state lines. So yeah, that was pretty fun.
That's awesome, man. Well, I
Thanks.
mean, and I like how she said, I'm not ready to start the USDA meat plant yet. Like she believed in this idea that you had. And eventually, I mean, y'all business up, partnered up, and I know there's some other friends and that have, that, kind of like family that have joined since then, and kind of that the culmination of this idea, and then you kind
Mhm.
of took it to another level. Because I mean, what was it? So you had this, 700 square foot, spot first, and
Uh-huh.
then there was quite an evolution of spaces and places, and then restaurants. So if you can maybe walk me through that timeline of the business development and kind of how that continued to grow, and also maybe, what was that like for, the community around you as you were kind of bringing in a product that was totally different in the sense of like it didn't taste like depression. It tasted like true happiness and bliss. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious about that kind of that timeline and how that kind of shifted and moved about.
That that's a great question. Yeah. So in that first year in that little tiny plant, I got way over my head. I was didn't have any money as we've stated, and I didn't have enough money to hire employees or so on. And we connected it to a restaurant that was right next door in this real industrial area in inner southeast Portland. And I was doing all the butchering, doing all the cutting, doing all the USDA work, working the farmers markets, trying to help out in the restaurant whenever I could at the same time, still not making any money. And I was kind of on my like very last straw. And I went to my sister and I said, I don't know, maybe I should just be a barista or go back to being a chef. I'm not sure if what's going to happen here. And she mentioned this amazing award group called the Good Food Awards. And the Good Food Awards is an amazing organization that not only do you have to produce food, but it has to have a positive impact in your community or environment or have something. It just can't just be delicious. It has to be trackable that it's done the right way. And I was like, I'm never going to win that. Like that seems so, I was just in a bad place, right? You work that hard, you do that much, you see no light, you become a different human being. And my sister entered four of my products of it. Long story short, I beat everybody in my category. I swept the category. All my products won. I borrowed more money to go to San Francisco to sell the product at the Ferry Building. And it was like right out of a beer commercial or a movie. And it was just like people coming up to me wanting to buy all of my product. I sold out in 2 hours and had a stack of business cards like that big of people being like, "Hey, can I get a wholesale app? Can I X, Y, and Z?" And I came back to my sister and it's like, "Look at this. They love it. It could work." And she saw it. She believed in me, and she's like, "Well, what's the next steps?" Mind you, she's brilliant. I haven't even began on that part. She has a master's degree in business. She is so hardworking. She's so freaking smart. And at this time, she was running the finances for the power company up here. So big job, big money, doing the thing. And her little brother has this hobby kitchen making sausage. And she believed in it, and we did some more strategic stuff. Borrowed money from my mom, got another one, moved to my next plant, hired my first two employees that year, Josh and Paul, which are with me still to this day, and we
Nice.
kept growing and we kept building, and every year we kept winning more awards and big and building bigger companies. My sister was very adamant about how idealistic I am and what my product's weird and how I can have positive impact and stay to my core values of quality first. And she's like, you're not the guy that wants to bring on outside investors. She clearly said that. She's like, you should really, really focus on profitability and being smart with the money that you get, and we should invest it back in. As soon as I moved to that new plant, I was getting crazy press. I couldn't believe where it was coming from. Like Oprah Winfrey said, I made the best chorizo in the world, which is like pretty good, right? Like that helps.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
and so of course, my website crashes. I was on CNN. I've been on, I think my restaurant won Best Dish in America at Southeast for a Riette hand pie. It was like I couldn't lose, and I also couldn't keep up with any of the business side. And so my sister was kind of harping on me, being like, "Hey, man, your website crashed and you have all this media and you're missing all this opportunity." And I was like, Michelle, I think our website crashed. And she's like, "What are you saying here?" I was like, I can't do it. I mean, I'm great at making sausages and I can talk and sell and I love it and I can organize a USDA meat plant, keep it clean, but I can't do the back end stuff." And she freaking quit her job and moved into the meat plant with me in this little tiny restaurant and walked away from a real salary. And it's been the two of us plus my, the business partners and everybody, but we've been here every day ever since, building this thing as it goes. And to fast forward to where we're at now, I'm in uh, 58,000 square foot meat plant. I do right over 1 million pounds of salami and sausages a year. I export to Canada, Japan, Puerto Rico. I have 6 restaurants. We have about 160 employees. And out of all of that, we're the nation's leader in good food awards now in any category. We've been able to do this scale and surround ourselves with the smart, hardworking people that have kept our quality and everything that we keep winning awards. But yeah, dang, that was the whole story right there. I hope it didn't bore you.
Didn't bore me, man. I'm almost moved to tears, man. That's beautiful. I am
Oh, thank you.
so stoked for you, for your sister, for your business partners. I mean, that's a feel good story, man. Just to and I will say this, and we talked about this before we hit record. You sent me a care package, and every single thing that I tried was the best version of that I've ever had. I had a buddy the other day who goes, "Man, you know what I wish I had? I wish I had a real good hot dog." And I was like, "I know where to go. I know what you need to do. Frankfurter, order it right now." And I sent him the link and he's just like, "Whoa." And I showed him the picture that's in the book. It's like a centerpiece where it has like all the different types of dogs that you have and like that you can make with it. It was the best hot dog I've ever eaten in my life. And
Oh, thank you.
well, for proper term, Frankfurter, but it was phenomenal, man, and every single thing that I've had. So I can only imagine the things I haven't sampled yet are probably going to be added to that list. So when you talk about it leading these, good food awards and being at the top of the class, and you getting this type of attention, and really a community, following of what you're doing, it's amazing. And you've
Thank
created
you.
so many
Yeah,
businesses here. I love it, man. And
thank you.
we can go on that, but you mentioned in there too your 6 restaurants, and I want to make sure that people in your region who want to come in and check this out in person.
Yeah,
Where are all these restaurants? What are
there
they? How do you identify each one? And is there kind of a difference in flavor and type of of each one, its own ambiance or its own style or specifications? And maybe kind of walk me through that real quick.
for sure. Well, thank you for the compliments. It's not lost on me. I really, really appreciate it, and I get a lot of credit for a ton of the hard work that everybody that does around me. Like it took a ton of people to keep this quality and do this, and the people I surround myself are unbelievable, and I'm forever thankful. But thank you yet. So all the
Welcome.
restaurants that we have here are in Portland, Oregon. And we've decided to kind of initially at one point, I think pre-pandemic, I had 7 different types of Olympia provisions. So there was like Olympia provisions X, Y, and Z, and they were kind of all over. And listening to the people, they found it pretty confusing because they'd
Hmm.
come from wherever it was and they wanted to go to the Olympia provisions. So in the last, gosh, 4 years now, we've really took it upon ourselves to change each one of the restaurants to have their own identity. So
Right.
there is one Olympia Provisions that is the original one, and it's 2 blocks down my uh, 2 blocks down from my rest or my meat plant right here, and it is amazing. It's open all day. You get tons of charcuterie, big epic wine list, and it kind of leans a little bit more on the French Mediterranean style of the cuisine. It's one of those ones. It's in the restaurant world. If you start hitting the year 15 and 16, I feel like that's when they hit their stride. Like they bang, if you stay on attention and it kind of bangs out all the rough spots is when it gets better. But I think it's just one of those awesome places. I love it to death. Ate there last night and was very happy.
Nice. What'd you have?
Sweetbreads with morels and peas were to die for. Like unbelievable. I know. It was so good. Yeah, I was so happy. The chef down there is an amazing human, Matthew. Big shout out. And then we have one on Division. That's Alpenrausch. That is more of a homage to the Swiss Alps,
Hmm.
which is like all alpine food. You can get the deer steaks with traditional sausage Jaeger artisan and hash browns and fondues and raclettes and sausages and beer, and has a huge alpine wine and spirits that are kind of hard to find in America. We have an amazing wood fire Spanish restaurant, all beautiful hearth. My business partner Nate Tilden made just epic Spanish food over wood fire. We have an Italian place that is really high end, awesome Italian steakhouse, super traditional, and then that ties into a more laid back, casual bar. All right, one, two, three, four, five plus a bar. There you go.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
So what is you mentioned the number before, but I don't want to take an incorrect stab at it. How many total employees do you have within the
It,
meat plant and all the restaurants?
It fluctuates. Yeah, right now I think as of today we're at 156, but as the summer comes on in Portland, and we still do tons of farmers markets, and we have a pretty good sized event arm. Probably in a couple months we always butt up right around that 200 mark sometimes, and we'll see how this year goes. But yeah, it's a lot of awesome people that
Do you
keep
have
cranking.
plans to expand it even further to that next level? Or you ever see yourself kind of moving out of the industry, or is it better to keep it close by so you can kind of watch your children grow?
The restaurants, I we we toy with it. I'm lucky. It's this interesting situation we get ourselves in, is you surround yourself with so many epic, talented people that you have to show them growth, and it's not always financial growth. Like, you can lose talent to people that just want it harder and more challenge. So I would never say we wouldn't, because if we find the absolute right operator that is so aligned with our core values and is driven like this, and they have an opportunity that they're eager to do, we could. It's not big on my to-dos to move to LA and spread across every which way that I could. We've had tons of offers and we've entertained it, and it's, as of now, it's easier to keep them here. But my main focus is in the meat plant personally, as an operator, and building my network of farmers, and just keep getting better and really kind of showing America what a quality meat company can do from a responsible sourcing area and having positive impact. And there's a pretty big narrative right now that meat is so bad, and I agree with this in a lot of the sense. The current way a lot of the pork and dairy industry is raised is not the way we can do this sustainably. So I'd really like to be able to focus on that and get that narrative out there, that there is a proper way and a good way, and you can support positive agriculture with the right farmers and the right meat makers. And so that's kind of where I'm really focusing and growing on, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, and I know that, when you talk about those core values and making sure you're having the best ingredients for the final product and that best experience for that end user,
Mhm.
and there's so much that goes into that. But I've seen you talk about, seen some posts, and even reading in your book there, talking about the idea of starting with that, of the best ingredients and getting the best products. And and I guess it kind of ties in too, where, you, like you were talking about the award too, they want to be able to trace back what that's done within the community. And it's not
Mhm.
just something that's delicious, but it's not just the feel good, it is good, like bringing in the best ingredients. And so talk to me a little bit about how you've done some of your sourcing of some of these ingredients, the meats that you're pulling in, that you're working with. And then I want to dive into what happens within the meat plant, because I'm fascinated with that too. So if we can
Yeah.
kind of maybe string that thread there, and we can kind of go
Yeah,
from
no,
there.
no problem yet. A good place to start is this is my first two original employees, Josh Graves and Paul Opliger. When they have a meat background, and they're amazing human beings, and they really latched on to what we were doing when we agreed to try to make the best meat in the world, not only America. And there's a huge history of quality meats that are the best in the world. And if you take Spain, for example, if you're familiar with Iberico pork and the amazing protection, what you go into that raw ingredient. They're pasture raised single breeds, protected and raised under these beautiful acorn trees or oaks to eat acorns. And um, what it would really take to make the best in the world would go to that practice, to be able to have pigs that live borderline a wildlife with a supplemented diet, that are the genetics are done and they have positive impact, and that we've always strived to. Like, and you step back and you look at where the meat industry is in America. For the pork industry alone, right, it's 98% of all animals are raised in confinement. They never see the light of day. They don't have much room to turn around. You have to use antibiotics. And I understand, I don't mean to poo-poo any farmer out there. That's just like, that's hard living, and that's what that is. But what people, some of the perception that people are getting is that they're getting this pig on a pasture from a small farm, and they're just getting dope. And so a lot of our life is to really trying to change that narrative to show, hey, this is what a transparent meat company can. And so ever since 2009, I've been working with small farms, trying to get them up to size. They're failing a lot, trying harder, working with Whole Foods, working with bigger partners to kind of get this up to scale in my local kill plant here, Carlton. And now I have quite a great network of farmers up here that are all GAP4 Global Animal Partnership. That is an auditing body that goes in there and says that the farmer is doing what they're doing, and they have their pigs on pasture and they're using them to improve their their farm, their land, and also in the end making me the best product I've ever made in my entire life, in a big step forward, which is just so happy. And one of the things you said is that's unique about my meat plant here is the meat industry is very, especially the charcuterie industry and the value added meat industry, there's a lot of them that are specialists at one thing. Like, you may be a really great sausage maker, you might be a really great salami producer, or you might be a bacon producer, but there's very few that are doing everything in-house. So if you come into my meat plant, which I can't wait to show you around, George,
Yeah,
it'll be
yeah.
great. There's huge smokehouses. We're dry fermenting thousands and thousands of pounds of meat. We're making pates. We're brining. We're grinding. We're butchering. It's kind of what you would think a meat company would be. And this has really allowed me to be a flexible meat company in that way. I don't know of very many meat companies in America of this scale that are doing it all. The vast majority of them are using a co-packer, putting their brand all over stuff. But what that's really happened for me is pushing ourselves to fully utilize and not waste and have the capacity to grow these networks. It's kind of a unique thing in the American industry to be able to be like a full carcass utilization on a charcuterie plant that's hopefully producing the highest quality, as well doing it the most responsible, is kind of amazing. I mean, I have a 50 horsepower, 50 amp grinder here that looks like a Volkswagen bus, that I grind every piece of bone, skin, feet, head into a puree and stuff into casings and dry them out for dog treats, so I don't waste anything from these farms. And I don't know of a fancy meat maker that's doing, I would say, silly, borderline silly things like that, but trying to make it a viable effort so I can actually promote these farmers and do these type of things. So yeah, it's this meat plant. I think I say a little bit in my cookbook. I've always built it that I wouldn't mind taking anybody that taught me anything to kind of walk through my plant and be like, wow, this is awesome. You made it quality first, not margin first, not speed first. If we can make it better, we would. I don't use liquid smoke because we know what that tastes like. You can make a frankfurter in a natural casing and smoke it over real apple wood and distribute it across the nation. We've proved that. I can make a summer sausage that's slow fermented, hand dipped in wax, and sell it across the nation. And those are the products that really inspire us to work harder and do the things that we do. It's I get less inspired if somebody ever comes to me and is like, hey, hit this price point and don't worry about the sourcing for it. To me,
Right.
that romance died immediately, and I don't even know how to do that. So
Well,
probably
go ahead.
go ahead. No,
I
no,
was,
please.
I was going to say, it sounded like too, like you growing up and with your family and having the restaurants and then going. I mean, you knew you were going to have in some capacity this once you decided to say goodbye to Burton and move on and get out there to Switzerland. But I think the enrichment of probably your family life and then going in and seeing all these people working to such a meticulous hardworking lifestyle there and perfecting sometimes like you had talked about in your book, there's sometimes this person made this the best and that was their one like niche, like that was the best thing that was in that region that person made. It was this whatever it was, and I'm just baffled by the ability of you to then come back here and have I don't even how many total products do you have that you have going out?
I think we're at like the 85 SKUs, separate SKUs here. That's a lot of products. Yeah.
That's a ton, but you put that meticulous, focus on each one and really, you talked about it too in the book. It's like once you've got kind of the recipe on this, it's not about like it's this, and you're making sure that every single time someone takes a bite out of that, whether it's now, a year from now, it's the same thing, and
Mhm.
you're reproducing this quality to just the nth degree. And I just find that so fascinating that what you've turned around to do. And I guess let's roll this into like the idea of like the meat plant there. What does it look like? I mean, you have different things curing at particular temperatures. Is there things that are sectioned off? You're walking through the front door. Walk us through like what that looks like, and then maybe we can supplement with some pictures so people can like maybe get a visual
Yeah.
cue on this.
Oh, for sure. There's plenty of videos of this place for sure. You walk into the front office, it's beautiful, and then you step into a staff kitchen where we feed everybody breakfast and lunch, and they get a beers after work, and they get meat to go home with the family, and then you kind of step into this plant, and it's like it's I've always said when you think of a lot of meat plants, I mean, there's that famous quote, you never want to see where politics or sausage are being made. I think
Right.
this plant is definitely the plant you want to see where the sausage is being made. It's like a real big, beautiful kitchen. It's music's playing, there's stuffers going, there's smokehouses blaring. We're still handpicking herbs every single day for our sausages. If we're grinding spices, you're grinding the morning of. There's walk-in coolers where we're hand butchering everything and making sure it's nice and organized, and QA checks and fancy machines packaging. And then you walk into these big other rooms where meat is fermenting, and that could be up to 8,000 pounds in a day of just fermenting sausages. And then you step into the next one that could hold 50,000 pounds of salamis covered in live active molds and a crazy wild environment. And then it's just I think there's a lot of, you got to be obsessed with manufacturing and how things come to market to be able to stick to this thing. Because I often walk back there and I'm pinching myself all the time of like, wow, we're actually doing this under the guise of the USDA here daily, and the silica audits and to those high safety standards, and it's happening, and people are happy and saying please and thank yous, and the morale's pretty positive, and it's just a fascinating place. I'm very, as you can imagine, I'm very proud of it. It's we have a mentality. We have our shop here where we do all the stainless steel aluminum welding, and we do all the wood cutting for the restaurants, and it's a lot of making is being done behind these doors.
Wow.
Pretty
Wow.
fun, and it tastes really good.
Yes, the best ever. I'm telling you, man, I'm just
Thank you.
blown away. And we were at the ranch. We were on a hunt and we took a break and we're like, all right, we're gonna try this. And then I just remember we just sat there in just silence. My buddy and I were just looking at each other and we're like, this is like it was the summer sausage. And then there was one that it had cheese inside it. I forget which sausage it was, but it was like
Yeah.
it was again, it was just amazing, and I was just
Thank
blown away. And I realized right then and there too. I remember calling my wife and telling her like, "Hey, we are gonna go make a trip to Portland. I want to see this all in person, try some of these things, as fresh as we can, right from the restaurants." And I'm just blown away, man. I'm so glad we got in touch with each other because
you.
I mean, just to hear your story, and for those who might not know, it's like Jesse Griffiths, a mutual friend. Um, he was one who's like, "Hey, you need to contact my buddy Eli. Y'all need to have a conversation. I want to hear it." And so I was like, "Great." And I'm coming into this blind, and then he kind of sent me a couple links, and then I was like, "Oh, okay. You have like the leading charcuterie, like, I mean, this business that I started reading reviews, and like you saying too, like Oprah and other people, like it was just left and right. People were saying the same things that I had felt, and just learning more about you and reading this book has just been fascinating. And I kind of wanted to turn it back to Jesse too, because I just had a podcast with him and then with Jody Horton talking about the turkey book.
Mhm.
And that was a journey of a bunch of hunts that happened last year.
Hmm.
And you were a part of this book and this process too, and you have some recipes there too, of
Hmm.
which I'm going to be cooking one because I just got a bird 2 days ago. So I'm going to
Nice.
try to do one.
Congratulations.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I'm going to do one of yours, one of Jean Paul's, one of Brad's, one,
Okay.
and just kind of do one of each person was involved. But I wanted to
Very
kind of
cool.
maybe, have you talk a little bit about, that process and being part of that hunt and that book and how contributed towards that, if you don't mind, real quick.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I was a huge fan of Jesse's, of course. Like, as a person that's made food your whole life, you get to watch a lot of cooking, hunting videos happen out there, and some of them you're like, man, they need to focus on shooting and not necessarily cooking, and that's just you just see it. It's in you.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
cooked your whole life. You're like that is unique. If you see Jesse cook or you see Jesse make something, and you can be like, man, that guy. There's no faking it in that gentleman. That dude he was woken up since he's been a little kid and made very delicious things. And he eats, sleeps, and drinks it. And I felt personally like as soon as he came on to that television of cooking wild games the way he did, I was like, oh, it is elevating. This is
Yeah.
what we need to do. We need to find people like Jesse that can cook this and unbelievable and take it to that next level. And so I was always a huge fan. And, we have a mutual friend, Kevin Hartlander, that reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jesse's doing a turkey book. I know you love turkey hunting. Would you be interested to talk to Jesse?" And I was full blown, Jesse, plug your ears, like nervous, Like I was like, "Oh yeah, like if I got to go hunting with Jesse and I got to cook for him or he got to cook for me, like that would be a super awesome experience because I love that." And yeah, he called and we talked about hit it off instantly. He started with a very simple question of what's your thoughts on cooking a whole turkey? And I responded back, I just don't think it's a great idea. And I'd say you're wasting a turkey. And we were like, off to the races. What's your favorite way? How do you do it? What do you utilize? What's your thing? How do and 2 hours went by in 2 seconds. I don't think we talked about necessarily hunting once, more so what we do with it. And, I love getting around that guy. I mean, I've been around so many amazing chefs and talented people, but there's a very few that I could say that are of Jesse's caliber for, of course, execution, but love of food. Like
Hmm.
he absolutely loves it. He loves every detail of it, and that shows through his food. And it's honestly like it re-inspires me often because I can get caught down in the drudgery of what's cool or what's next and new restaurants, and then you meet people that it's so deep in their soul cooking. You're like, that's why we do this, to make just people happy through our food. And boy, he is, if not the best, one of the best chefs I've ever have been lucky enough to eat with or cook with in my life. So yeah, then Jesse decided to come up in the Northwest to come turkey hunting, which was so awesome. And I think it was really funny because we had this amazing communication. Kevin, that lives out where we did it in Eastern Oregon, an unbelievable hunter, like so much better of a hunter than I will ever dream of being. Like, let's just say that right away. Guide and such an amazing human being. We had this conversation. Is it too early to do it in April? And he's like, nah, we got it. It's very rare. It snows up here and mid-April. It'll be beautiful. We'll be picking morels and t-shirt hunting, and we were super stoked. But he's like, there is a chance it might be snowing. And as the date kept coming, he's like, it's dumping out here, gents. Like it keeps getting more and more snow. There's a real fun text message going on of like, hey, Eli, do you have group text with Jesse and everybody?
Uh-huh.
Hey, do you have those snowshoes? You can bring Jesse some. And Jesse's like, snowshoes?
What
Like, what?
the?
What are we gonna go to a larder to get like bear fat to And yeah, so we got here, and the first morning it was really really cold and knee deep snow, and it was just everything I wanted to see as a Jesse. I kind of out of his element, but embracing it and having so much fun and figuring out how to navigate real loud snow and calling in turkeys. It's it's awesome.
So
Yeah,
y'all
and
ended up
he
y'all
go
had some
ahead.
good success there. Did everyone get a bird that
No,
turnaround?
no, just Jesse.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest with you, we had multiple opportunities, and things kind of went one way or the other. But Jesse had shot at two and got one, and yeah, it was. it was plenty of adventure for the amount of snow and navigating, and it was a public land hunt, which was kind of new to him as well. It
Yeah.
was sharing chunks of property with the masses and trudging through snow and cooking and doing all the great stuff. But he really loved it. Yeah,
And
there were some
now
really fun
you
times.
contributed some recipes to this book, right? How many total did you do?
It's a great question. I think I did four total.
Okay.
Yeah, there was one. It was a cheater highlight one was because we had it's the offal with the marsala sauce and toast. He wanted me to do some kind of offal sauce or something along those lines, and I was very excited because I love this offal dish. Use the heart, the kidneys, or the livers and the gizzards and all of the stuff, and dice it up in marsala and tons of it. But we were in the midst of a big snowstorm, and we got back to the car and like, gosh, it's really hard to get after them when it's winding and snowing. And we didn't want to drive back to town. And we had the idea of starting a nice big fire. And we had whiskey for hot toddies after hunting. And so we had a fire and we're using thyme to make a hot toddy and honey. And we're making these warm whiskey drinks and had a big fire going, which is already cheating. You can't get better ambience and better food than being outside turkey hunting with your friends in a snowstorm, which is pouring enough for them, and having this warm fire, and then you make a big gravy of marsala and gizzards and livers and hearts and buttered toast, and you're sitting out there, and I mean that's some of those things is not really the recipe as much as it is, hey man, like go ahead and replicate this anywhere, and you're
Yeah,
gonna have
right,
the best
right.
recipe. Yeah, it was fun. I love that stuff. Those impromptu sitting around a fire while you're hunting, just cooking and enjoying a beverage is, God, it's the best. It really
Oh,
is.
absolutely, man. The camaraderie and friendship, having something that you just, took care of the right way in the land and eating that.
Oh, yeah.
Along those lines, let's say like you got a turkey, if you were to be making one dish, it doesn't have to be one of those four that you contributed there. If you're going to be making one turkey dish to share with your friends and family, do you have one that is kind of like a go-to or like, hey, that's the first one I'm doing off of that bird?
Yeah, I really love that avgolemono dish that is in there, that recipe, that lemon chicken stew. I know it's very nostalgic for me because it's what my family fed me for any bird we shot. It doesn't matter what it was, and we would always make this. And there's a part of it's just like part of health. Like it feels very nurturing. It's undeniably delicious, and it's very unique to have that. And it's very lemony and dill, and it's an egg custard, and it's got feta and onions on top of it. But it feeds a lot of people with it. It's a real bright, nice way to get to share a lot more of the bird, and you get to use the carcass for broth, and it's a good way to utilize everything. And my wife loves it, so it's like it's my
Yeah,
go-to at all
win-win.
times. Points immediately. But I just love turkeys too. I mean, they are some of the most unbelievably delicious any which ways you can kind of get it. And they are so fascinatingly delicious. I love
Well, and
them.
you just came down to Texas here
Yeah,
and
we had the
did some
best
hunting
time.
here with Jesse as well, kind of packing onto that. Well, tell me about that experience for you. Was that your first time hunting turkeys in Texas?
Sure. Well, it's first time hunting in Texas. Yeah, I've
Okay.
never been like I've been to Austin, of course, for work and a few
Hmm.
other places, always on the selling. And I think I've been on Travis Lake one time and saw turtles and was baffled by it. And I've always been really into the idea of getting out to that countryside. And man, I loved it. I had so much fun. It was everything I could imagine. Nobody told me how pretty Texas is in the spring. Like,
Oh,
holy smokes, those wildflowers it
yep.
was so unbelievably green and just fields of blue and unbelievable flowers and these cactuses and the oaks and just everything. It's like, I'm sure you've done this many times in your life. You kind of picture what a hunt will be like or where it's at, and you have it built up, but you try to keep it under wraps. Like you don't want to get too excited and overpromise what it is. And like the second we started driving out to where we were going, and it was just way prettier, way cooler, everything about it. Like the food was better, the tacos were better, the camaraderie was better. Everybody got turkeys. They were gobbling like crazy. We had tons of opportunities. We all got birds, and we were frying them in beef fat at the end of the day, drinking delicious wine. It was, I don't know how I would do it better, Jesse. Tell you the truth. Jesse, if you listen to this, 5 stars.
Yeah.
I'll go on your Yelp page.
Texas turkey hunting tours with Jesse Green. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah,
Highly
exactly.
recommended. Oh
Highly
man.
recommend.
Well,
Yeah.
it's been fun to kind of see everyone right now because obviously we're right in the middle of kind of our turkey season and seeing all my friends, have some successes and kind of what they're doing. And I have one bird left over in the freezer, and then a new one that I just added to it. So I'm very
Oh,
excited to try that. So I think I'm going to try the dish you just mentioned there as well. I'm going to go with Jesse's fried turkey because I had that one. He talks about that being his, birthday and death row meal, and so I cooked that. With
Mhm.
one breast I had just to kind of give a quick sampling of it when as soon as I got the book. So I was like, okay, he says this is to go to and cook that, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the best
Um,
wild turkey dish I've ever had. And I've done a lot of kind of chicken fried stuff and things that weren't, I never really jumped to that next level of really trying these amazing dishes. And that book is by far kind of an all-star cast of ingredients and recipes. So
yeah.
I'm excited to kind of go through that and wanting to get more turkeys to try out all the different recipes
Yeah.
because every one I read is like, okay, now it's that one. No, okay, this one too. So it's exciting.
What a what a brilliant idea he had with that book.
Yes.
It takes an amazing, humble human to surround yourself with like a bunch of really talented chefs and hunters and be like, hey, there's so much to learn in this. And the book is just it's going to be a masterpiece forever. I can't believe the writing he does. He's so humble. You never knew
Yeah.
he was such a great storyteller. And of course, he can incorporate food and writing. So it wins on everything. And the chefs and the people he ate with, he did such a great job of capturing the recipes and promoting what the dishes are. And gosh, it's like a mouth-watering hunting book, where you just want to
Yeah.
sit, read, and cook and repeat and get you excited for turkey hunting. And like it's sitting next to when was the last time I had a cookbook literally on my nightstand? Like
Yeah.
I want the stories, like they're usually in the kitchen or I'm at the study to learn. Like this thing is just a read the beautiful story that's getting me like I read the hunting books before hunt all the time because I get so excited about it. But this is one that before going turkey hunting in 5 days here, it's when ours starts. You're already reading this book as like just fun for a hunt, and
Yeah.
then you get into the recipes, which are 5 stars and some of the most delicious food I've ever seen from all sorts of talented chefs. So yeah, it's an amazing book. I'm gonna go ahead and say it better win some awards. Let's go,
Yeah.
people.
Oh, if it doesn't win another James Beard Award like the Hog Book did, then there's something
We're gonna
wrong,
burn it down.
or there's something really good out there too. Because this is hands down, it's just one of the best. And I was lucky enough too because when you sent me your book, I also had like the turkey book right around the same time. So those backpacked each other. Like I was one and then to the other. So I had cookbook on my nightstand for like 3 weeks. And even when I finished one, I picked up the other and then I went back to the other. Like I read them both cover to cover twice and just was blown away. And it inspired me to try to up my game and whatever I'm doing. I was just like, man, these two guys are doing so many amazing things, putting out some of the best stuff out there in the world that I can imagine. And I was just, I'm so happy that you sent me that and we got connected, man. It's been enriching to kind of learn more about your journey and to be able
Oh,
to
thank you.
sample the best damn meat that I've ever had. I mean, you
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
incredible.
what Jesse's doing with his books and making it food it's so important for what America has going in the cooking wild game world. I want him to keep doing them in every which way. Man, I mean, I know you know him pretty well, but I want to start a campaign for him to do a freshwater fish book. That gentleman and his excitement for fishing freshwater and the way he goes about cooking it is like, if he did that, it would change the game in what people are eating out here because he is just has such an amazing ability to make food taste so good that's caught. And gosh, he loves to fish himself some freshwater and I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
saltwater.
Oh yeah. No,
Plenty of salt in the books.
I'm, hearing about like with the wildbooks.com and hosting both of their, those
Uh-huh.
books that they've been a part of through St. John Press and him and Jody and just that there's more coming, and I'm
Yeah,
just so excited to see what's next. But it's like simmering in and what this is now, and getting to see the success of this book taking off has been great. And
oh yeah.
um, I'm hoping too that our listeners, I want to get some of your books in their hands too. So hoping we can kind of maybe do some type of giveaway with that
Of
and have
course. Yeah,
people
heck
just
yeah.
because it is something that I love that your book. I feel like it takes the idea of someone going into making, charcuterie and curing some of these meats, if you haven't done that and you've just cooked stuff before, and this idea of a whole new process, it can be very, overwhelming, I think, for some people to take that step. And I think you break it down in such a way that it almost invites the listener and the reader to take, a journey with it and be like, okay, I'm going to try this. And
Yeah.
I guess, I was, curious too. There's got to be people that have come to you with that, like, hey, I want to try to have my hand at this, knowing they're not going to make it to that nth degree of, this perfection, but they want to, dive into this new way of like curing these meats. And I was kind of curious if there's certain things that you'd point them to, and I know you kind of mentioned in the book, but just for listeners, that you would say, hey, this is something that you guys should try, and maybe some of the kind of 101 stuff that maybe you want to give people as far as, instructions on what it is that they need to know and think about along the way. And just maybe if you, kind of speak to that for a little bit, if for the people who are ready to, they're on that edge and they want to take that next step in that journey.
Yeah, exactly. I think the most common thing that somebody says is hey, I want to make prosciutto or salami, and they've yet to make the more simple things. And the way I laid my book out is I really wanted people to understand that there's almost as much craft, if not as much craft, in just the basic charcuterie, and it's way more enjoyable than dealing with fermenting and drying and building dry spaces and smokehouses. All that stuff's amazing,
Yeah.
but right out of the gate, there's so many easy ways. If you take all the romance out of a charcuterie maker, at the end of the day, you are a value added meat maker. You're just adding value to the meat and salt and preserving it. The most simple thing is a roast beef is still charcuterie. Roast beef, just salt and a roasted beef to your sandwich meat liking is charcuterie. So, I mean, I tell plenty of amazing deer hunters out there that a top round roasted or smoked to the right temperature makes a really good deli meat that you almost are never going to beat for the rest of your life. That's a nice place to start. And you know what you need is some salt and an oven. Like you can start very basically, and then learning the facts of preservation with curing in a confit and using animal fats to slowly cook tough cuts and turning those into a pate. And if you eventually get to the grinder operation, make a few pates. Like there's nothing wrong with utilizing offal and making the texture and failing. You're not risking anything. And then eventually get yourself into a stuffer. And then maybe start making yourself a bratwurst or a breakfast sausage and then start casing those. And then if you still get to it, then go ahead and put them on the Traeger or get a smokehouse and start smoking sausages. And slowly but surely, like enjoying that process of curing meats, you're going to learn a lot more than jumping right into the most difficult task of fermenting salami and dry curing a product that's going to take you a year to enjoy. Where there's a way to learn in there. It's definitely the Karate Kid approach. Let's go wash some windows before we go. Doing all the good stuff, and there's so much enjoyment. It's so easy. I don't. I'd rather have somebody preserve duck legs than maybe they only use the breast off of a duck and they have an opportunity to make a pate that will blow people's mind, probably more so than the salami will that could potentially get them sick, or it could just have so many chances of going wrong. Just make a perfect confit, learn that art, start there, and put it into your bag of tricks, then go on. That's kind of fun for sure.
No,
Yeah,
it's, well said, man. And I'm learning in the game. I had a buddy who was like, we did a country pate this last year and
cool.
using, I think, 4 or 5 different animals that we got from the ranches and the hunts. And it's just a fun thing to do. Like being, okay, cool, we're going to try this. And, knowing, hey, it could fail. We're going to find out. And it was just delicious. And it just kind of re-inspired me to take another step with that too. So
That's it.
I'm very excited to be trying out a lot of things in your book. And I've already got some that, little sticky notes on the book back here. And, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this page. I'm going to do this. So I'm very excited. And I know listeners, you guys got to go check it out. Um, I got a couple questions before we sign off.
Of course.
And one of the things I'm thinking about, and I've heard a lot about what you've talked about with family, um, and this connectivity to this ethos of what you're bringing to the table with Olympia Provisions, and you know from all your experiences there in Switzerland, and then now. being one of the top producers here in the world of what you got going. And I wanted to kind of get your idea of like legacy and your personal legacy that you hope to leave behind and your professional, like how do you want people to remember you? And this, I know we're still young men, but as far as like what you're doing now is going to have an imprint on the rest of your life and those around you too. And I was just kind of curious about, what is your thoughts on legacy in that personal and professional setting?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think professionally, in my ideal state, I would love people to recognize that there's just a different approach to meat making in America. Being able to look that quality definitely ties directly to more sustainable farming practices. Like that would be quite remarkable to be able to say, hey, you're never going to get as great as you potentially could and feel the absolute joy you get from food if you're not treating the animals and the farmers that work with you with respect. Like that would be the greatest thing. I'm not, my sister definitely has built this company that we don't necessarily want to sell it to the highest bidder. In my ideal state, I would love that the employees that surround me, we put enough core values around it, and the parameters are there, and the infrastructure is there, that my employees can continue to be an employee-run operation. That would be an ideal to change the narrative in America what a charcuterie company is, and have it be employee-run would be quite ideal. And personally, I ideally working in the meat industry and making my livelihood off of it, leaving it with a clear conscience and allowing me to, hunt chuckers with my dogs without any regret in it would be quite amazing. And getting, having knees and no heart attack and health while I do that would be an ideal situation. But being able to go and spend hunts with my family and do all the things that I get to do and not have any regret about how I got to that point in my life would be quite nice. Not stepping on harming on anybody and leaving pretty positive impact would be the best case scenario. Did that answer your question?
I think so, man. And I already know you got a positive impact. I mean, it's true in your product and the people around you. When you bring in two people to start this and they're still there, that
Yeah.
says something, and you have people who believe in you and they're willing to take, a risk, with your sister, like leaving her company and coming back. There's people surround that idea. And then I think it kind of just snowballs in the positivity and in the idea of everyone's involved in wanting to make something better and be able to share it, which is, I think, what really comes down to a lot of people that, work within foods and in that industry too, of wanting to share something and have that experience. There's nothing like having a wonderful meal surrounded by your family and your friends and being able to, have that experience. Man, I remember that one night where I had that one meal that was one of the best nights of my life. I surround myself with a lot of experiences in my life that are around an open fire at the ranch, at a dinner table with my family, my wife making some of the best damn Italian food, like and sauce and what it takes and the smells of the kitchen for days, and those things are always remembered and remarkable. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I definitely feel like you answered that question well, because I know that you're making an impact and you will continue to. And you have the best damn product out there. Like I said,
Oh,
one of
yeah.
the things I tried was the best. I highly
Uh-huh.
encourage people to go check it out and follow your journey. And with that, can you go ahead and give me some websites and maybe
Yeah,
even list off some of the restaurant names for those who may be kind of local there too,
for
and how
sure.
people can follow you?
Yeah. The company is Olympia Provisions, Olympia Provisions on Instagram, olympiaprovisions.com to go shopping or just to see what we offer. The restaurant, Olympia Provisions, Alpenrausch, Grand Amari, Little Bitter Bar, and Bar Casa Valle, and of course, Olympia Provisions as the restaurant as well. And I'm on Instagram as Elias Cairo.
Nice. Well, everyone, make sure you go and follow those places. Go to the website and place your order. And we'll talk a little bit more here after we sign off, as far as doing some kind of giveaway and making sure people can maybe get a little sampling in their hands, because I'm sure they're hungry and excited after listening to this. So,
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
well,
thanks
hey,
everybody who listened. Thank you. Really
thank you
appreciate
so much. I really appreciate you joining me here today. I'm going to get you down here to Texas again. Would love to show you around the ranch, and I definitely want to come visit out there. So, this is just the beginning of a friendship that I'm so glad that, Jesse introduced this man.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I can't wait to get back down to Texas. I know I've never shot a whitetail. I know that's like crazy to somebody. I've never even had the opportunity or a tag in my hand for a whitetail in my life. So I
Well, I can help fix that. We've got two ranches in my family. One's not far from the Austin area, and
awesome.
I'd love to have you out there and host you, man.
God, that'd be amazing. I got to do it.
All right, let's
Fascinating.
make it happen. Let's make
Let's
it
do it.
happen.
I'm in.
All
Just trust
right.
me. I got sausage and will fly.
I love it. I love it. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in once again to the podcast. And like I said, go to the description below, check out those links, follow Eli and his company and all the wonderful things. And once again, thank you, sir.
No, thank you so much. It was great. I appreciate it. You have
All
yourself a
right.
wonderful day.
Cheers, man. You too.
Cheers.